In this lesson, we'll focus on how to remove the hair on top of the head, in addition to the patch of hair below the lower lip. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we want to remove the hair on top of his head and this patch of hair right here below his lower lip. By doing this, we're going to further push this character away from appearing human. And we ultimately, again, want this character to really feel fantasy-like. So we don't want any kind of human traits, such as this nice little haircut that he has here. And again, this is also going to prove very useful in the next lesson when we start to incorporate additional textures to really add just some blemishes to the overall appearance of his skin. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw our attention to the layers panel. Once again, we have a new group, which I've titled Skin Refinement, and we're starting off again with a merged copy of our entire head. So we can now grab our lasso tool over here in our tool panel, and let's go ahead and zoom in here. And I'm just going to make a selection of the skin on the head, on the forehead rather, right above that highlight, but below the hairline. Okay, so that looks about right. Once I've done this, I'm going to basically right-click within the selection, and we're going to go to Layer via Copy. Okay, excellent. So once we've done this, we can hit Control-T to free transform, and we'll go ahead and size that up. And now we can basically start to warp it by right-clicking again and going to Warp. And I basically want to kind of start to cover this area containing his hair. Okay, excellent. Now that's looking pretty wonky right now the way it is. So one really quick and easy thing that we can do is just create a clipping mask by right-clicking on the layer and going to Create Clipping Mask. So it just basically kind of clips it to the layer below. Now we can also grab our eraser tool and just kind of erase away any areas that we don't need that clipping mask to affect. Okay, excellent. Now while we're at it, let's go ahead and just title this layer Scalp Cover. Okay, great. Now what we want to do is start to blend this in to the rest of the head. So we're going to go ahead and just make a new layer. And we'll go ahead and title this layer Skin Pore Blend / Refine. Alright, so it's on this layer that we'll also blend in this scalp, and then we'll also on the same layer remove and clone out that little patch of hair just right below his lower lip. So we're going to grab our healing brush tool once again, just making sure it's on all layers in our control panel. We'll just go ahead and size up our brush. Alright. And let's go ahead and kind of zoom in here, and I'm just going to kind of sample from both sides and just start to basically weave this skin together. So just kind of coming along that very prominent edge that we have there. And we're just basically starting to try and blend it all together. And so as I've mentioned several times throughout this course, I'm trying to maintain the skin pores as we go. This really does prove useful later on when we start to basically add additional textures to the skin. We're going to basically kind of mess up the skin a little bit, but we want to have those pores also showing through as well. And maintaining the skin pores as we go is just a lot easier than trying to do it towards the end where we have just a lot of damage stretched out or just hard-edged areas. It's just a lot easier. Okay, so we've almost got this scalp pretty well integrated in. It's looking very nice. Now, one thing I have noticed is that this highlight doesn't really add up too well ever since we kind of elongated the head, and so we're going to kind of focus on that, just kind of maybe bringing that up just a little bit here momentarily. All right, so I'm liking how this is coming along. We're starting to kind of basically blend that in together very nicely. Let's go ahead and change gears, and we'll come down here and focus on basically cloning out that little patch of hair. We may want to use either just a healing brush tool or we could use both the healing brush tool and the clone stamp. So we'll just kind of see what we end up with here. We may want to go ahead and use the clone stamp. Let's go ahead and size up our clone stamp brush and just kind of start to clone in some of this surrounding skin, and then we'll come back over it with our healing brush and just clean it up real nice like. So again, you'll find yourself using a lot of those clone tools together. They really do work nicely together, I think. So just kind of trying to cover up that hair. We really don't need it. Now, it's not to say that orcs don't have hair at all. It's just we want to remove this hair. That way, if we ever wanted to add hair of our own, we could. Okay, so we're going to use our healing brush tool once again. And now we're just kind of weaving this all together. All right, excellent. So we've pretty well gotten rid of that hair. That's looking much nicer. So just kind of making a quick comparison. Did quite a bit there just on that one layer, just kind of weaving that hair cover in. All right, so the next thing we want to do, as I mentioned, I kind of want to finish out by adjusting this overall highlight on the forehead here. So let's go ahead and just make a new layer, and we'll title this layer Highlight Adjust. Okay, great. So on our new Highlight Adjust layer, let's just zoom in here to the forehead. And let's see if we can try out our healing brush. We'll see what that does for us first. Just holding down Alt and sampling. See if we can bring up some of that highlight up into just a little bit higher on the scalp. We may want to go ahead and switch to our clone stamp. And what I might want to do is we can always switch our brushes here in the brush preset picker using our clone stamp. I might want to switch to a soft round brush. And let's go ahead and bring down the opacity and flow just a little bit. And let's see what that does for us. We may want to bring up our opacity just a little bit more. So just kind of play around with those settings up there. So just kind of cloning it up some of that highlighted skin up just a little bit higher. And then we'll kind of weave that in. Okay, now let's go ahead and switch back to our healing brush tool. And we're just kind of starting to weave some of this together. And as we go, we can kind of make a comparison. We may want to kind of reduce the opacity a little bit. May want to come in with our eraser tool with a soft round brush. Just kind of blend that in. Just kind of trying to bring that highlight up just a little bit higher than what it was before, just so it kind of works a little bit more nicely with the overall scalp. Okay? And even on this layer, I may want to do some further blending since we're bringing up that highlight just with the overall scalp cover that we brought in. I noticed that we're kind of getting a little bit of a odd line right there. Kind of a contrast in light and shadow. So just kind of adjusting that just a little bit. Oh yeah, that's looking much, much better. Really blending together just a lot more nicely. Okay, great. So now that we've gotten rid of the hair, kind of that human element of the hair, we're ready to start bringing in some additional textures. So in the next lesson, we're going to be looking at a few different images of some textures such as concrete and stone, and we're going to see what that can do for us and basically how we can weave that into his skin to really show that there's a little bit of kind of skin damage, some blemishes, and just kind of add to that whole feel of the character. Again, I'm thinking about the environment this character lives in, kind of a subterranean world. And so I want his skin to really reflect that texture-wise. So stick around, and we'll see you in the next lesson.